This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Mary. We'll now call the meeting to order. So Jan, can you go through the governor's, please?
I read it before the present vote?
Yeah.
All right, probably one last time and I'll read it fast. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GLC 30A Section 18 and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Harwich Community Preservation Committee on Thursday, March 10th, 2020 at 6 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website, www.harwich-ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: on Channel 18 or by watching the simulcast at http://harwich18.dyn.org/cablecast/public/live.aspx?channel 1 space B = 1. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means to the greatest extent. Oh, no, I guess that's not there. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the Town of Harwich's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. I'm supposed to read something else, but I didn't see it there. So that's it.
Can I have the call to order? So can we open the meeting? Roll call vote, please. We'll start with Mary. You're muted,
Mary Maslowski, present.
Joe,
Joe McFarland, present.
Kathy,
Kathy Green here.
Carol,
Carol Ridley, present.
Robert,
Robert Dome, present.
Elizabeth,
Elizabeth Harder, present.
and David Nixon, present. Okay, next is there anybody available for public comments? Hearing none, we're moving on. Can I get approval for the minutes of February 3rd, 2022 and February 17th, 2022? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of February 3rd, 2022 and February 17th, 2022.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please? Discussion. Any member of the board? Hearing none, roll call vote. Again, we'll start with Mary.
Mary Maslowski, aye.
Joe?
Joe, aye.
Robert?
Robert Dome, aye.
Carol?
Carol Ridley, aye.
Kathy?
Kathy Green, aye.
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Harder, aye.
And David Nixon, aye. Okay, updates for town meeting. Just an update for the board. I got a CC from the town administrator, from John Giorgio, the town attorney. There was a question on the community preservation. How do I put this? There was a question about the amounts of money that we used, that we've established and we're using in our admin fund. In other words, the request of the 60,000. And the attorneys, the town attorney said based on the 5% rule, that it needed to be looked into. And the 5% rule is you can only use 5% of the funds of the Community Preservation Act for administration funds. The finance director went in, did a spreadsheet, everything come out, so the articles are fine. But I'm just making the board aware of what transpired. So, any questions from the board? We'll start with Mary.
No questions. I knew we were under the 5%, so glad to hear that was true.
No?
No, I'm good.
Robert?
I'm fine.
Carol?
I just wondered, how was this raised? Was this a question someone raised, or was it flagged by council?
All the applications from the town side
Hmm.
go through the process of being vetted by KP Law.
Mhm.
They picked it up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Now remember, there's 3 other applications that went through KP Law that are on the CPC side.
Right,
Okay,
got it. Thank you. Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome. Kathy?
All set.
Elizabeth?
I do have one question with what you, not about that, but what you just said. I thought it had been decided that all the articles that came to us were vetted before they came to us by the lawyer.
Well, obviously, I took the initiative and I had the 3 that were extended, that were not the town articles, vetted by a specialist that deals with CPC within KP Law. I can't answer the other question. What I can say to you right now is, I don't know when it got there. I don't know how they did it. I'm not privy to those conversations. All I can tell you is what John Giorgio wrote back, and the articles moving forward have been vetted by KP Law.
Okay, thanks.
I wish I had more information for you, but I don't. Okay, next, discussion on the application, the CPC application. I requested this because the CPC board does not have a written policy on how we handle this application. We've had numerous discussions about it, but there's no written policy. And I want to clarify that, and I want a policy written so that we can say, no matter what member of the public come forward and ask questions about vetting those applications, this is the policy that's in place. These are the timelines that are in place. So, you know what where I'm going. I want to establish hard timelines at this point. So, what are the thoughts of the board members? I'll start with Robert.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think the application does explain the fields and everything that be filled out, but it sounds like you're really leaning towards tying down timelines. I think maybe we should have a policy of some type about how much should be completed, or, to make sure that they have completed all the sections. The other thing that I think was a little confusing is on the where we ask for the sign-offs for other committees or whatever that are appropriate. It appears to me, I think the way the application is said is that the person applying puts down what committees they think it should go before approved. At least that's what I saw in the wording. I don't know if there's other thoughts on that, because are we going to have some that we're going to say we expect the selectmen, for instance, to approve, even though they may not have to? I mean, I don't know, but I think that was kind of brought up on the housing, yet they put on their form that they were going to get reviewed, not approved, reviewed by the selectmen which was never checked off, obviously, on the application. So that's an area I think that needs to be tightened up or maybe more clarified than anything.
Good points, Bob. Joe? You're still muted. I'll come back to you, Joe. Mary?
So I agree with some of Bob's points. You know, it is, I do think if it's something that's using historic funds, then it should come to be required that it comes to the Historic Commission. You know, if it's housing related, it should come to the housing committee. Real estate related, RIOS, I think that usually happens. My only concern with the hard dates is that is only the way the our meetings go at the end of September, September, October, that we tend to, particularly on historic, we have one meeting a month. So depending on when those applications are coming forward, you know, I would like to be flexible on those kind of review dates on the reviewing committee, but I also understand your point about wanting some hard and fast deadlines. So.
Okay, I'm going to interject just a moment. I hear what you're saying. Let's go through the entire board, hear what everybody's thoughts are, and then we'll come back and we'll see if we can iron this out a little better. So,
Absolutely.
Okay, Kathy?
Well, so what you're saying is that the application and the guidelines and the rest of the memorandum that goes with it doesn't stand on its own.
Not as a policy for this board.
But it is
It's not a policy, it's an application.
But it's a document that we use, that we ask them to sign off on.
And I understand that, but I want, in addition to, what the chair is looking for, in addition to. Now, you as the board might find that too restrictive. That's what we're going to find out tonight.
Well, I don't find it restrictive. I'm just concerned about redundancy. I mean, we don't have any other policies or guidelines in a specific policy handbook. So.
No, we don't, but we do have written policies.
Okay. Okay. To Mary's comment about the review of the different commissions and boards, you know, we've allotted extra time in the current application. I think it's like a December 1st sign off or something like that. I mean, let's face it, 90% of the applications are repeat applicants.
Mm-hmm.
They know the process. All right. There's no reason why, if they know that they have an application that's going to be in the queue, that they couldn't get on the schedule sometime, you know, in the 6 months prior to December 1st.
So Kathy, I agree with you on the December. As long as it's a December date, I think it's okay. I think sometimes, knowing how things are around here in the summertime, September comes up awfully quick and October 1st comes up awfully quick. So I just want to make sure that, you know, the couple extra months I think is fine. I don't think we should go beyond December.
Well, I mean, part of the problem too, though, is that we don't have
one at a time.
We don't have follow-up on that. Okay, so for example, the Affordable Housing Trust submitted applications. Now, I don't know if there was a disconnect between the person that was filling out the exact application and the person who signed the application, but in the listing of organizations to get a review or approval from, they listed 5 or 6 different groups and not one single one was signed off on. Now, some of them they may have gone to and they may not have, we don't know. Okay, so we didn't insist on the follow through. So, I mean, there's something that we need to, you know, we need to decide if we're going to follow through on any particular policy that we put in place.
Understood.
And in response to the vice chair, That's why I want to put the policy in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
All right. Robert, no, I'm sorry. Who did I miss? Joe. I'm coming back to you, Elizabeth. Joe, go ahead.
You hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I'm getting a little confused now because I'm listening to Kathy and to Mary. To you, Dave, when you say you want to put the policy in place, can you just really describe what you're talking about? What exactly do you want to say?
I want to,
For example, God, I'm sorry.
the chair would like a written policy in place. There is no policy unless it's in a document. I want that in place with a specific time that the board would decide to allow the applicants to come in, do their application. We have that in place, yes. But the follow-up applications and the information that's in the applications themselves, they get a time limit. We've had extended time limits.
Okay.
It's created a disaster, in my opinion.
So you just want some clarity in the process from step A to Z, and they all know what their timeframes are to get from original application to follow up to completion. Is that right?
I don't want to be so frank as to say, Joe, and I'll say it anyway, I don't want the timeframes abused.
Yeah, I know, and to Kathy's point, I mean, you already have a policy that I totally agree with, but you already have a policy in place. There's an application everyone follows. 90% of the people know how to do it. It's always a few, always 10%, that don't play in the rules and just submit something that is less than favorable, I should say. And I don't know. I'm just, being in the military for 23 years, it's my way or the hard way, and my way is the board's way, and it says this is the way you're supposed to do this, right? If you don't want to do it correctly, you send it back to them and say, you get no money this year. I know that sounds very harsh, but I mean, everyone else follows the rules. Everyone else follows the policy from recreation to the cemetery to the boom and the bar. So I just, I just think you hold to your guns on what you have currently, but also to the chair, add that the steps and the timeline as it relates to the policy. It's just my thoughts.
I can actually appreciate the military aspect of that, clean and concise. But the point is, there is no policy. We have an application. There is no policy in place. That's what I want to do. But anyway, I'm sorry. Mary, I'll come back to you. Elizabeth.
Thank you. Okay, here's if I were God, I would say the policy is all applications must be submitted by October 1st. They will be distributed to the CPC committee for perusal. And at our October meeting, we will go over all of the applications to discuss what is lacking, what we need clarity on, what needs to happen for next steps, or whether the application is perfect and it's good and we can put that aside until we start voting. We then say that we will return the applications with questions by November 1st to the recipients, saying we want A, B, C, D, and E, whatever. And December 1st, they must have the applications back to us with all the information we asked for. And if not, we will not consider their application this year. That gives them 2 months. really, to ask questions, fill things out, get things approved, da-da-da. I would even say that if we're worried about them having enough time, one of the things we go over is in our thing is what committees they should get a sign off from, if any, and let that be signed off and have that not need to be signed off of until January. But I mean, if you want to be hard about this and have hard, fast rules, month, done. It gives everyone a month to do what they have to do. So that would be my view.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Mary?
So my only point, David, was that you could simply just enhance that paragraph with the deadlines on the application and say any underlying boards, report back from any underlying boards for support is required to be received by the CPC no later than December 1st, and just put it in the application. The application is a contract. Like it or not, the application is a contract signed by the applicant, submitted to us seeking funds. So if you simply expand that paragraph in that sense, I mean, I like Elizabeth's idea. My only concern is that we look at things in October, we notify them by November, then they've got to get on a meeting, and there are posting deadlines, and different boards and commissions meet at different times. So it feels like you're expanding the time, but you're actually shrinking the time if they don't look at it themselves earlier than that. I mean, we can always say to them, we can always send the suggestions that other ones are needed, but I think you just put it in the application. I mean, I don't know that setting it as a rule is helping you any more than just having it in the application.
Thank you, Mary. Carol?
Thank you. Yeah, I think these have been great comments, and I agree. I think it would be, there's always an opportunity to review, what's written as the, requirements in the application and try to clarify and enhance that. I just want to make sure, and I think it's been said by some here already, that, it doesn't hamstring the committee as well as create a burden for the applicant with rigid timelines. But it seems to me that one of the problems that you're trying to solve with this policy is to prevent an applicant from sort of shorting the information in the original application and providing it later. I think that's one of the concerns. I guess one of the things I want to raise, because I haven't heard it mentioned in this discussion, is there a policy or is there clarity about whether an application is complete and whether it's going to be accepted? Because I think there was a lot of that discussion in our review of applications this time around, and maybe that's a piece of the policy that we need to take a look at as well, which is, and it kind of relates to the second, which is if your application is complete, this whole question of follow-up information is more of a minor issue. So I would like to maybe include that issue or that question in a discussion about policy as well.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. I'm processing everything you're saying. And I'm going to say this to the board, and it's not meant to be arrogant, but in the private sector, there are deadlines. And if you don't meet the deadlines, you're penalized. That's why, and I keep getting hammered with this word from academia called codify. So where does that fit in? That's why I'm looking for a hard numbered policy. Again, it's the board's choice. If you can offer, Carol, that was very good, offering a recommendation. Elizabeth did the same thing. Let's get to the point where you agree. At least now you know where the chair is coming from. So, Elizabeth, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I think if we take everyone's comments into consideration, I mean, Joe seems ready to do hard and fast. I think that whether it's in a policy or on the application itself can be discussed. It can also be both. And then we make it clear that initial, application deadline is October 1st. And then we promise to get it back to them by November. And then to Mary's point, you're right, especially because of Thanksgiving and stuff like that, giving them 1 month to complete and make it clear that we are giving it back to them because we find their application to be incomplete. And so they must get their completed application back to us by December 15th. And if they don't complete the application, then they will not get money this year. I mean, I think that takes everything everyone said into consideration.
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, I want to clarify though what a complete application is, because I think all the boxes should be filled in and everything by October, October 1st or whatever date, other than maybe the references. But we're not going to be able to thoroughly vet the application in October because that really doesn't happen until December. And a whole bunch more questions come up. And those should not obviously be boxed in, if we say that, oh, well, we wanted this financial, but you gave us that financial. I don't think that's disqualifying the application, even though it's happening in December after that final date.
Can't we just say, the statement doesn't have to be if it could be, give us wiggle room, like maybe this one isn't completed enough because we have more questions, so that's on us, not on you.
Yeah.
But if we just felt like you didn't give us the information we asked for, you're not taking us seriously, you're not doing your due diligence, then we're not going to waste our time.
Yeah.
But in a nice way, not in mine.
Kathy, thoughts?
Well, I was just gonna ditto what Bob was just saying, in that a lot of times it's during the discovery process when the applicant is before us and that we're asking questions that we, might present a question that says, okay, they need to seek public opinion or they need to seek additional reviews or something like that. So I don't think we can leave that too long. I mean, maybe we want to move up the application to September 1st or something, the deadline, if we want to give them a month to sort of get their ducks in a row. I mean, I think that they've been doing it long enough, most of them, so that, they should know what is a complete application and what isn't. I think it's been on our end that we've let it slide and have accepted incomplete applications. It's either complete or it's not complete. I mean, we can always ask for additional information, which we've done, and we could have a deadline for additional information, but either the application's pretty complete or it's not. One thing we talked about a long time ago was the fact that we have representatives from many of these areas on our committee, and that those people were available to applicants to ask questions, to have them look at their application to see if they had any thoughts. We talked about maybe reaching out to various groups, for example, historic, okay? Whoever represents historic could be the person that reaches out sometime like months prior to the Cemetery Commission, to, Brooks Academy Museum, or to whomever, and say, okay, do you have an application that's going to come this year? Do you have any questions, any thoughts, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, be more proactive.
Good thought, but you got to take into consideration the outside entities, outside of historic, et cetera.
What do you
Mary.
mean?
So one thing I just want to follow up on Kathy's point, though, remember what we the commitment we got from administration last year was that all town applications were going to be vetted through administration and vetted through the selectmen and then sent here. So I think that did happen this year with like the cemetery application and things of that sort. So we can talk about the Affordable Housing Trust aside, but rec, all of those things did, I do believe, did go through administration and get vetted first, because then the town was the applicant. So the only other concern I have with the things not being complete is that during my tenure on the board since 2017, we've seen a lot of applications that have changed amounts during the course of the application process. That the original application might have come in at 70,000, but then a procurement or an RFP comes in and all of a sudden it's 138 or it's 120,000. So, you know, do we then say that the application wasn't complete because, well, you originally on October 1st you applied for 70,000, but really now you're asking for 120 and when January rolls around because, you know, RFPs have come back and you've gone through that process. In September, and I will say September is a little early to be doing the procurement process for something that's for money that's not going to be available till June or possibly July of the following year. So I worry about us getting on a little bit of a slippery slope. I think from a practical standpoint, if you as a board member don't think an application has sufficient information to back it up, we can always vote no. So I understand the policy part too, but I also, at some point I feel like we're going to make this too complicated. And, you know, David, you talk about codification. To me, that's a real legal term of art. So if we're making rules and regulations, then we have to draft rules and regulations. We have to notice it to the public. We have to have a public hearing. We have to adopt rules and regulations. And they become the equivalent of, say, the selectmen's liquor license regulations or entertainment rules and regulations. So, like, that's a real term of art. So it depends on what you're talking about. And I just think from a practical standpoint, if we can accomplish the same things by putting some notices into the application that the applicant has to sign and is acknowledging that they have read and understand the terms and conditions listed in the application and they're signing it, then we have some teeth to hold their feet to the fire when we say, hey, you know, we asked for 2 references by December 1st, or we asked for referrals from the local boards and commissions that are appropriate for the bucket of money you are requesting. So, rec looking for money for pickleball, well, it should be coming from rec and youth, and it should be coming from, you know, open space. It should be coming from real estate and open space with a recommendation, or conservation commission with a recommendation, or planning board, like affordable housing. It should be coming from planning board and a housing group for use of those funds. So I wonder if we can't solve the problem, but by just kind of detailing, putting a few more details in that closing paragraph of the application without going through a rule setting procedure.
Mary, you're killing me on legalese.
Well, you're killing me when you start talking codification. That has real meaning, right?
That's all I hear from above. This is a learning experience for me. That's for sure. Kathy.
I don't have anything else to say.
Carol.
Well, I just feel like I agree with Mary's sort of structural approach that whatever additional information or clarification requirements should be incorporated with the application itself. That document, that should be the guiding document, and maybe it needs some more clarification and some more provisions added to it. But again, I feel like a lot of what we're talking about here I mean, there's a big difference between information that's clarifying once, as someone said, you know, through the discovery process, you know, we come up with questions, and so we ask clarifying information or enhancing information, versus basic information that should be in hand when we start the review of the application. And to me, that's the piece that I think was a little bit problematic this year in some instances. And I would weight that issue in revisions to the application and be clear about a policy of when the committee may say, this just isn't complete. We can't review this. And it's not a matter of just clarifying information, it's basic information that we need. So there's that. And on the question of, one more thought on the question of the committees, just from my experience working with regulatory boards, where you go for a regulation, you know, you're going for a regulatory permit and you need to go to other boards, usually you will be asked to indicate whether you've been already, and if not, when you're planning to go. Are you scheduled or not? And, you know, so it's sort of clear, not just listing the name of the committee, but that, you know, you've kind of worked that out. So that could be another, you know, piece that's added to the application. Thank you.
I lost my thought. Elizabeth.
All right, I'd love to see things written down. So if we did something like, whether it be policy on the application, both. Applications must be completed and submitted by October 1st. Should the CPC ask for any clarifying information, it must be returned by the date specified. Any application that we deem to be incomplete after that may be denied. So then that gives flexibility, because if we get an application like the junk we got from Joe Powers that that had nothing filled out, we can send that back and say, look, you didn't even fill out the application. You have 15 days to fill it out, or we're not going to listen. Whereas if somebody doesn't know what they're doing or they're waiting, we could say,
time out. What's happened in the past is in the past.
Right.
I don't want to denigrate anybody on this board.
Okay.
Or anybody that puts in an application. So we'll leave it out.
Okay. But
I like your idea, your basic idea, the way you just proposed it, it makes sense to me. So continue on that thought, please.
And then, so if it's like they didn't fill out the application at all, we can give them not as much time, because we're going to have to vet it maybe again. So we say return this with the form completed in 15 days. For somebody who's either waiting for application process or waiting for something else, or it was a good faith incompletion. Do you know what I mean? If it's somebody new and they've never done this process before, we could give them 30 days or even 45 days, whatever we want to do. We have the flexibility to give them as much time as we want before it comes back. And then we just make it clear that if we feel the application was not completed to our satisfaction, we have the right to deny it. And that way, that keeps people from complaining about, but it's a good project. And we can say, it doesn't matter. You didn't do what we asked. So does that make sense?
Are you advocating doing that within the application?
I don't care whether it's in the, I think we should do it both. I think we should have a policy which is really fleshed out and explanatory, that is on our webpage, that goes out with everything. And then we can do maybe bullet point versions of that on the application, or completely spell it out on the application. However, it doesn't matter to me where it goes. I just think that would really help people clarify what the steps are without locking anyone into any further dates after October 1st.
Interesting. Jen, you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt y'all, but I looked at the application and we do have a 2-page section of the application that has our written policy of terms and conditions for the applications. So if y'all wanted to put something in written policy on these new timelines or whatever, this is the section. I mean, you would say these things right in this section. You
Okay.
also can put it with the dates like Mary's idea, but you could do a full written out on this 2-page section because that's where people would look for it.
Thank you, Jen.
The problem is that people don't read anything.
Right. At least we have it.
So for starters, I mean, we've had a lot of this stuff out on the application and people don't read it. So the question is if we're going to have it on the application or elsewhere and they still don't read it, what are we going to do about it? What's the repercussion? I mean, it's easy to say, okay, well, we may, not, accept your application then because it's incomplete. We need something that says that that's going to be by vote of the committee, or, I mean, who's going to make that decision? Because this year we had a vote where, I mean, specifically, I didn't vote to support something because the application was incomplete and everybody else did, but everybody here is saying tonight that they didn't like the incomplete application. So, I mean, we need to put some teeth into something. David, you're shaking your head.
I understand what you're saying, Kathy. That's why I offered in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean,
In my opinion, there has to be a penalty. And the penalty would exist with the application not being vetted through. But that's just one person's opinion. This is a board.
Right.
I want to hear what you folks have to say. Joe.
No, I just to finish this thought is everyone's saying the same thing. They're just saying it a little bit differently. But basically, I think they're all saying, there are timelines or there are deadlines. However, to Elizabeth's point, however you put it in, I really don't care. But if you don't meet the guidelines and you don't get back to us what we need, you do not get money this year, period. It's not going to be a question, and we're not going to talk about it from one application to the next. I didn't like, someone was saying earlier, well, there might be someone that's brand new to the process. Well, then to Kathy's point, if it's a housing thing, then I'm going to go walk that person through the process and make sure they get it done right the first time. So, because it can't just apply to the people that already know what they're doing and those that don't. It has to be a policy for everybody. It's, just simple common sense. I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Robert.
I do think that part of this is going to be very critical, is that we do our first meeting, we walk through all the applications and identify what's missing and get back to them right away to let them know that their application is deficient and give them that deadline. And then if they don't do it by that deadline, we don't consider the application.
That's pretty straightforward. Elizabeth?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. And I think everybody is that we just say we're not, because I don't think we should even bother. I'm hard. I don't know if we need to specify that not being considered means like we're not even going to hear from you about the merits of your project. But we just say, flat out, if you do not return your application to us with the requested information, then your application will not be considered in this funding year.
Carol?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, again, not to make this a regulatory kind of situation, but I mean, there is a little parallel because sometimes when you submit a regulatory application or a permit application, the first step is, do you meet all the application requirements? And then if you're deemed to have met those requirements, you're accepted as an application, and then you go through review. And I think that's a little bit what we're talking about here is, and maybe we call it that, a sufficiency, evaluation or something, just to make sure that all the boxes are checked. And if they're not, it's going to be returned to you with whatever specified amount of time to correct what's missing. And if it is, it gets into the bin for further review. But that's a pretty standard, procedure. And I think that's what everyone's talking about here.
Yep.
Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
Kathy? Okay. Carol, specifically, would you be willing to write something up?
Sure. Maybe if others want to team on it, I'm happy to. Or Elizabeth sounded like she had some good ideas along that route as well. I'd be happy to work with Elizabeth or anyone else.
Hey, any other board member would like to participate in this?
I would love to work with Carol on this.
Okay.
I mean, we can just do it by email even, but I'd love to see you in person. But so I'd be happy to work with Carol on this.
Okay. Mary?
I just want to make sure
I did not use the word subcommittee. Mary?
that's what I want to make sure we're not doing. So if it's assigned to one person can have other people assist them. So that's the.
So I see.
I think the preferred method of looking at it.
Okay.
Well,
Assist Carol in her endeavor. How's that?
Marvelous.
Carol, would you please make the request to any other of the board members if they'd like to help? I'd rather have it come.
Sure, maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah, if anyone wants to weigh in on this, maybe just shoot me an email and we'll coordinate. Does that sound good?
That sounds like a plan.
Is that okay? Is that okay, Mary?
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this topic from any board member? Mary?
Nothing.
Joe?
No, I'm good.
Kathy?
No.
Carol?
All set.
Robert?
All set.
Elizabeth? And I'm all set. Thank you. All right, moving on. The update to historic inventory project. Do we have that update?
Yes.
Okay, Robert, you have the floor.
So that Senate quick.
Robbie, breaking up.
Just a second. How about now?
You're all set. Start over, please.
Okay. So the report was sent out with the minutes by Jan. I won't read the report, but I'll mention the highlights. So the first topic was to update the 100-year list with the historic properties through 2022. We have done that internally and have come up with 58 properties that will be added to the 100-year list. And the historic board members are actually doing a physical ride around to view those properties to make sure they still have a building on them and that it is hadn't been changed that we didn't know about. The second part of that is typically we would want to put that in the MACRIS database with the Mass Historical. And we probably, that was part of the things that we'd probably have a consultant do to do these Form Bs. But because of some other issues later I'll mention next, is we probably won't, there'll be a low priority to get that done. The next item was to thoroughly document all the villages, which a lot of that form was done by by Miranda Dupuy, and but they cannot be submitted directly to to be included in MACRIS because they don't have historical background. So we're going to actually concentrate our consultant on the historic background, less on the architecture, because that's complete. So those be able to be entered. Sarah Korja from the Cape Cod Commission has been really helpful in analyzing what we do have in MACRIS. I have sent her the stuff that Miranda had done, and she has actually found quite a few areas that need improvement in existing things that have already been posted, and feels that we should kind of put those on our priority list too. So we've identified, or we are in the process of identifying those items that have to be revisited with either the historical information or the architectural. And she's been very helpful in that. And I think that'll be the concentration with getting the project completed. For instance, we just found a bunch of Form Bs that were totally completed by one of the previous consultants, but actually never entered into the database. So we have to find those and submit those. Finally, the last part of what we asked for was updating object and areas, and particularly memorial parks and things like that. At this point, we're probably not going to have any money left over to do that, and we'll probably carry that over to a future ask. And that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I'm going into the database now. I'm going to look at the amounts. Any questions? We'll start with Mary.
I don't have any questions. I just want to commend Bob. He has really done all of the work surrounding this project and done deep dives and spent a significant portion of his time kind of figuring out what was wrong, what needs to be fixed, and really working with Sarah Korjeff to try and get this moving forward and get this to where it needs to be. So I just wanted to thank him publicly for that.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. Mary, do you remember what ATM that was? That money came out of?
It was 2020. It was the 2020 town meeting, because it was delayed until I believe it was the one that we voted on in September on the delayed town meeting, if memory serves.
Okay, because I don't see, I'm looking for it now. Historic property inventory.
Yeah.
I think it was 2020 town meeting.
It's number 31, it's section 1. It's a multiple phased project warrant listing. That make any sense?
Yeah, it was under 50,000.
Right.
All right, so I have here for part of it an available budget of 34,500.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bob. Mary, I'm sorry, Kathy.
Yeah. So to start, why are we getting this report now? Is this in advance of us asking for reports in April, or is this from the past reporting cycle?
No, we're getting ahead of the schedule.
Okay, getting ahead of the schedule.
We submitted back in October.
All right, great. Okay. So on the first part where you talk about updating the inventory, who exactly is doing that? Is your committee actually physically doing the inventory?
Yes, we're not doing the Form Bs. We're physically making sure that the properties that we derived out of the assessor's database, we want to make sure that we're not picking up a building that was actually built in 2007, even though the record says it may have been 1920, for instance.
Okay. So you're physically doing part of it, and then the other part of it, which is the MACRIS B forms.
Correct.
Who is doing those?
I think we're not going to be able to do those. If we can do them within the budget, they will be done. But to me, they're a lower priority than fixing the older ones that are already in the system, and the ones over 200 or 300 that Miranda has done. So they get in because they'll really fill out the villages, because when you look at the database, the villages look very sparse, and this is what Sarah really pointed out to us and was surprised that we actually have the documentation. It just hasn't been completed.
Okay, so exactly who is doing the work? What is the money in the budget being used for specifically? Like, is, you know, 20,000 going to X person to do this and 10,000 going to whatever? So what's the process?
Our assumption right now is it'll be one person, because typically these people that do the Form Bs can do both parts, the architectural and the historical, but they'll only have to do the historical on, say, 250. Then we're going to identify some that may need the complete form, both the architectural, and they'll be bundled in the same proposal, because usually it's the exact same contractor that will do that. And that's the entire, pretty much the entire amount of the money is dedicated just for the contractor.
And you're putting together an RFP for this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right. All right, because then later on in under the village clusters, you say, we will review current entries in the MACRIS database. Who's the we?
Oh, me and Sarah have been doing that.
Okay.
So we've been doing that to find where the holes are, and so that we can identify specifically what they are to put them on the statement of work for the bid.
Okay, and then we're at the last line there. It says there's a possibility that the Cape Cod Commission will aid us on completing the ladder through their new software. Would we be paying for that?
No, they have volunteered to do X number. That is yet to be determined, and to what extent. But they did volunteer to test out their software with us to complete the Form Bs while in the field. Okay,
and do you have like an estimated time of completion that you'd like to see this particular project completed?
Definitely within a year. I want to get the RFP out within the next 4 months at the latest.
Okay, thanks.
I'll say, Kathy, thank you. Quick question, Bob. What's this database?
Oh, the MACRIS, that's the Massachusetts, for the Massachusetts Historical Society Commission, I should say, has this MACRIS database that has all the historical data for the whole state by town, and there's different things in it. There's usually objects, whether it be monuments, bridges, items like that. The vast majority are properties that go in, and those are the individual buildings or houses or whatever. There's historical events like a cannon. I think we have our cannon, the one that killed some people, in the database, and all those things. Plus, there's the whole thing about villages and clusters. So we do have an extensive documentation done 25 years ago about all the villages, and that's already in the database. That has to be, and most of those are connected to the individual buildings in that area. But for instance, we discovered North Harwich, they put in the entries, or they listed in the North Harwich village what the buildings are, but they never completed any Form Bs at all. So those are ones we have to catch up on, and we didn't realize that until we really started analyzing what was in there. So that's the information in it. And then this is a good stepping stone if we use it as for the demolition delay, we usually use those to see what the history of that building was, to determine if there was a historical significance. You know, a sea captain may have owned it, and, you know, things like that. And that goes into part of our decision on a demolition.
Okay, now I understand now. Thank you for clarifying that. Does it have anything to do with the National Register of Buildings?
The National Register is, would be typically a first step towards that if you wanted to do that. And indeed, the database does collect that information to say that it is a National Historic and it's a separate column, and you can click on it, and that'll pull up the National Historic database if that building is accepted into the National Historic. I think in Harwich, we actually only have one or two, other than Historic District, as far as individual buildings are registered in National Historic places.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bob. Mary?
So I just wanted to point out, to Kathy's point, the work that Bob has done individually and with Sarah Korjeff is really allowing us to get a lot more done with the CPC funds than we would be able to do if we were relying on a
Right.
consultant, period. So, he's probably doubling the amount of work that we're going to be able to use to get done with that $34,000. So that was my point for raising the fact that Bob has really put in so much time in this. We, to his point, to have all of those Form Bs sitting around that haven't been entered, and to beef up the village portion of that database will be a significant improvement, even just in and of itself, never mind all the other work that he's going to get done. So.
Thank you, Mary. Joe?
I don't have anything more. I thought the report was really comprehensive, and information just now is very, very good. So no, I'm all set. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Carol?
Yeah, great report, Bob. And just one quick question. So is this database open to the public? I mean, who has access to this when it's ready?
Yeah, it's open now. It's MACRIS, MACRIS. If you just Google that, it'll come right up to the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and you can do a search on it. You put in Harwich, and it'll dump all the entries for Harwich, and there are 550 in there now already. Some are deficient, but there are quite a few in there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Elizabeth?
Thank you. I have to say, I knew nothing about any of this. I don't even think I was here in 20. If I was, I must have just joined. So my head was swimming at the time. And I read your report and knew exactly what your committee was doing, exactly what you were using the money for. And it all made perfect sense to me and educated me completely. So if everybody could write a report as well as you could, our jobs would be so much easier. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take an attaboy out of petty cash. Okay, anybody else in the audience, anybody else on the board have any more discussion about this particular topic? Hearing none, we're going to move on. I just want to talk on the old business. There's nothing under other. We had a discussion the last time we were together about reaching out to the public and getting some information on Channel 18 and the brochures and other things that need to be done. Does anybody, those things are going to be taking place. I don't know if Joe can give an update on that, if he's.
I don't have an update yet. I was supposed to John's wife was supposed to give me dates, and I haven't gotten anything back from her yet. So.
Okay, there's a reason for that. That's going to happen.
Okay.
So, just to give it a heads up. And Kathy, we will get some brochures back. I have to visit Jan's house to get them, and I will start distributing them. But is there any way that each one of you, for the new members, I'd like you to have a copy of the brochure so you understand what we're talking about.
It is online. They can see it right on the website.
Is it the entire brochure? It is.
John put it up.
Okay, then that's good. So when you have time, please review that. Any suggestions other than what we discussed here tonight for getting information out to the general public? We have the brochures that we're going to get out. We're going to do the Channel 18 interview. Anything else any one of you can add to that? Elizabeth?
So John and I, at the last meeting, were tasked with working together to put together a press release for April based on the information that's in the brochure and anything we want to update. And so I've been doing a little draft of that on my own. And when John returns,
Up, yep, up. Got it. Okay, Elizabeth, thank you. Anybody else? Robert?
No, all set.
Carol?
All set, thank you.
Okay. Kathy?
All set.
Joe's all set. Mary?
I just want to throw it out there on our next agenda. We might want to start thinking about scheduling that public hearing.
Well, in that case, can everybody take a look at their calendars now? When do we typically do that, Jan? What's the date?
It's been fluctuating by July, because if we push it to later, then that messes up our calendars for the project applications coming in and setting all that up. In September, we have our fall updates. So this progress report should probably stay with September. We probably should have the public meeting in July or August. I would say July.
But we don't get a lot of people. I mean, last year we had nobody.
can we,
That's just my suggestion. Y'all do what you want.
But
Okay, all right. Hold on. Thank you, Jan. Start with Mary.
I was going to suggest we make it earlier and suggest June. We'll give us some time to talk about it, get it out there, and then, you know, it's not deep into summer yet. So
We have done June.
Jan, I got it. Go ahead, Mary.
So if we do June, we're not deep into summer yet, but people should be back. People will be back from Florida. We can get our public input. It'll be after town meeting. We can plug it as right after town meeting that we're looking for input, the public's input on how they want us to spend the money. And that's really the goal of that hearing. And I agree with Kathy. The public input we've had has been slim and none most years. I think the most in the years that I've been on, I think we had maybe 8 people, and that was a year when it was all department heads that came because they all had applications for us. Other than that, I think we've had 1 and none and maybe 2. So, you know, it'd be wonderful to see the public come out and really talk to us, because it's a lot of money we're spending and we're putting a lot of our own tax dollars back into the town. So it'd be nice to hear what people have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Kathy?
Nothing to add.
Okay, Carol?
I think June sounds like a really sensible timeline.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Bob?
Yeah, June would be great.
Thanks, Bob. Elizabeth?
I think June is perfect as long as we have it either before school lets out. I mean, preferably, like, I don't know when graduation's usually a little before school lets out. But if we have it before school lets out, then then it's just like any other day of the year. Do you know what I mean? So as long as we can have it then, most people will still be around, and the snowbirds will definitely be back by then. So I think if we find out when graduation and school and the school closure dates are, that will help us narrow down a date in June.
Okay, so it seems to be a consensus that it will happen in June. Take a hard look at your calendars, see if you can come up with a date for the next meeting. It'll be on the agenda. If you need to reach out, if there's something special you need to get to, just send the chair an email through the town website. So other than that, anybody have anything else for the next agenda? Kathy?
Well, isn't April the month where we're having any outstanding application or any outstanding, any funding balances that are still open? Aren't we getting reports in person in April, Jan?
Yep. So April 7th, it's the semi-annual open balance updated status reports. It's in person at Town Hall in Griffin, the large meeting room.
So that's already been set. Does it matter to the board if we have a second meeting in June?
We need a second
That's
meeting?
the question.
June or April?
June.
June. Why do we have to have two meetings?
Isn't that what we're talking about?
No.
You're talking about April? I wrote June. I have no idea why.
Okay.
Okay.
I vote for one meeting a month, okay, whatever month it is.
So you want to combine it with,
Combine what?
now I'm confused.
I know. What are you
So
talking
April 7th, we're getting financial information presented to us. Is that a joint meeting or?
No, you misunderstand. So do I. Mary,
You're muted.
Mary?
Joe. Thanks, Joe. April 7th is the day when all of our outstanding balance applicants are supposed to come before us and give us updates. Historic went early because presumably the chair asked Jan to ask us to present early, so that's why we went today.
Because we have so many open projects.
So we expect all those updates April 7th. To David's point on June, we can have the public hearing as a part of our public meeting. Just we have a public hearing as the item number 1 on our June meeting, and item number 2 is the rest of our agenda.
Right.
So no need for 2 meetings. We can do it all in one.
You're muted.
I am muted. Does the board agree to that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we've established that then. Is there anything else that any of the members of the board would like to have on the next agenda? We'll start with Mary.
Nothing from me, David.
Joe?
No, I'm good.
Kathy?
No, so that means that June 9th is the second Thursday in June. Would we choose that for our public meeting and regular meeting? We just need to find out if it interferes with high school graduation. Correct?
Right.
So it can be a tentative date. Elizabeth?
No, I'm just saying, yeah, that's, as long as it's not graduation, then nobody will care.
Robert?
So we're talking right now about June, or are we talking about the next April meeting when we're going to have all the reports?
Right now, we're talking about the possible June 9th date.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay,
June 9th.
thanks for the clarity, Bob. Carol?
That works for me.
Okay, and I will be in touch with the other members of the board. I'll put it that way. So, is there anything for the next agenda? And we left off with Kathy. So we're gonna go to Elizabeth.
The only thing that, we were going to discuss, but I think we should put off till May because April will be full, is, I had follow-up, you had given me follow-up questions, all of you, about the affordable housing trusts on the Cape. So if we could put that on the May agenda, and I can do a follow-up then.
Okay, done deal. Robert, anything else for the agenda?
So we're going to do all the reports on that one night?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember we did that once and it went till like 10 o'clock.
Which is why I asked you guys to do it tonight.
Carol?
Just a question, really. So I've been asked to come up with some language in consultation with some others, but would that be coming back to the board at the next meeting or maybe the May meeting? So think about when you might want to put that back on the agenda.
Okay. I'll send you an email. You have
Very
time.
All right.
There's no time constraint on this. Okay, Jan, anything we need to, did I miss?
No,
I guess we're all set. All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
could I suggest,
Go ahead.
we know when town meeting is, could we also investigate the May date for our May meeting? Not this minute, get back to us as well for June, but also for the May meeting.
I thought our meetings were the second Thursday of the month.
We aren't setting a whole year in advance, even though that's what we're, classic on the
Well, that's
second
what's on our
Thursdays.
That's what's on our webpage too, is that we meet at the second Thursday of the month. So I'm assuming that unless we change it, that's when our meetings are.
That's what I'm,
Okay. April is the first Thursday because of school vacation week and it was a request. So otherwise it's the second Thursday of the month, correct?
right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, we set?
Yep.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to,
Adjourn. So
Move to
moved.
adjourn. I'll second Kathy.
roll call vote. Mary,
Mary Maslowski, aye.
go.
Joe McFarland, aye.
Kathy,
Kathy Green, aye.
Carol,
Carol Ridley, aye.
Robert,
Robert Donai.
Elizabeth,
Elizabeth Harder, aye.
Joe.
You already did me. I'm an aye.
Good night, folks. I'm done.
Good night.
Everyone.